If you're listening to this, something has already changed. Not suddenly, not dramatically, quietly. After long periods of awareness, the brain does something unexpected. It stops generating commentary. This silence isn't emptiness. It's what appears when monitoring is no longer required. The glitch, RFRMED. Many people describe this state as a glitch, a delay, a sense of disconnection. In neuroscience, this happens when the default narrative system reduces activity. The brain stops rehearsing identity. Nothing is broken. The system is conserving energy. Like a computer closing background apps once a task is complete. You've been running observer mode for so long that its absence feels strange. But the strangeness is just unfamiliarity. When a machine works quietly, we sometimes mistake efficiency for malfunction. The internal narrator has been your companion through every decision, every memory, every plan. Its absence creates a kind of echo. But this echo isn't loneliness, it's space. The brain has finished a cycle of reorganization. It no longer needs to explain itself to itself continuously. Think of it like this. When you first learn to drive, every action requires narration. Turn signal, check mirror, brake gently. Over time, these actions integrate. The commentary fades, you still drive, but the step-by-step voiceover is gone. This is similar, but for consciousness itself. The watchtower guard has stepped down, not because there's danger, but because the watch is complete. For months, maybe years, you've been attentive, observing patterns, noticing thoughts, tracking emotional states. This level of awareness takes tremendous energy. The brain dedicates resources to metacognition, thinking about thinking. But there's a threshold, a saturation point. After sufficient observation, the system learns what it needs to learn. The patterns are mapped, the triggers are known. At that point, continued monitoring becomes redundant. It's like having a security guard watch the same empty hallway for years. Eventually, the protocol changes. The guard is reassigned. The hallway doesn't become unsafe. The watching was simply complete. What you're experiencing now is the transition phase. The moment after vigilance ends, but before the new baseline establishes itself. This in-between state has no name. It's not meditation. It's not dissociation. It's not depression. It's the gap between operational modes. Your mind is updating its firmware, and during the update, certain features are temporarily offline. The sense of disconnection people report isn't a severing. It's a recalibration of what connects to what. Old neural pathways that supported constant self-narration are being pruned or repurposed. This feels like distance, like watching yourself from outside. But that distance is just the difference between high-resolution monitoring and baseline functioning. You've been zoomed in for so long that normal magnification feels remote. Some people describe feeling like they're moving through water, everything slightly slowed, slightly muted. This is the nervous system downregulating. The constant readiness posture is relaxing. When you've been braced for a long time, relaxation feels like weakness. But it's not weakness. It's the body remembering it doesn't have to guard against every moment. The glitch feeling also comes from timing mismatches. Your internal processing speed has changed, but your external obligations haven't. You're expected to respond at the same pace, make decisions with the same clarity, maintain the same social energy. But your system is running on different protocols now. It's like trying to run new software on old hardware expectations. There's lag, there's buffering. This doesn't mean something's wrong. It means recalibration takes time. The world demands consistency, but transformation requires variability. You're in the variable phase. Some days will feel clearer than others. Some moments will snap into focus, while others remain soft. This inconsistency is not a failure of progress. It's the texture of integration. The glitch is actually coordination, multiple systems coming into new alignment. It feels disjointed because it is disjointed, temporarily. Like an orchestra tuning, Every instrument is making sound, but they haven't unified yet. The unified sound will come, but first there's this. The scattered phase, the adjustment phase. Let it be scattered. You don't need to force coherence before the system is ready. Signs of the quiet phase. Mental fatigue appears when constant self-tracking ends. The brain has been running at high resolution for too long. Imagine holding a muscle in tension for weeks. When you finally release it, the muscle feels strange. Weak, almost. That's not weakness. That's recovery beginning. Cognitive rest can feel like cognitive decline to a system that's forgotten what rest is. You may notice it takes longer to formulate responses. Words don't come as quickly. This isn't cognitive slowdown. It's the reduction of automatic verbal processing. Before, language was instant. Thought and speech were nearly simultaneous. Now there's a gap. Thought arises, and a moment later, language follows. That gap is noticeable. It can feel like stuttering, even if no words are spoken. You're experiencing the space between stimulus and response that normally gets bypassed. This space is actually valuable. It's where choice lives. But when you're used to automatic responding, choice feels like hesitation. You may feel less attached to roles, labels, or long-term plans. This is not loss. It's reduced narration. Identity is partly a story the brain tells to maintain continuity. When the storytelling pauses, the character becomes less defined. This can feel destabilizing. Who are you without the story? The answer, the same person minus the constant retelling. You might notice you care less about things that used to matter. Your job title, your social image, your long-term trajectory. This can trigger alarm. Am I losing ambition? Am I becoming apathetic? Neither. You're losing attachment to the narrative of ambition. The ambition itself may still be present, but it's no longer wrapped in identity. You can still work toward goals. You just don't need to narrate yourself as someone who works toward goals. The action continues. The story about the action quiets. This can make you feel purposeless, because purpose, as we usually understand it, is a narrative construct. I am the kind of person who does X because of Y. Without that sentence running, purpose becomes more immediate, more situational. You do what's in front of you, not because it fits a larger story, but because it's what's here. This feels aimless to a system accustomed to long-term plotting. But aimlessness and presence are sometimes the same thing. Walking into a room and forgetting why is not a failure. It's a transition between attention states. The brain was mid-switch. The task was loaded, then deprioritized, then dropped before encoding. This happens more frequently when the system is reallocating resources. Forgetfulness in this context is not deterioration, it's reprioritization. Some processes are being backgrounded, so others can update. Memory works through narrative coherence. When you walk into a room with a purpose, you're following a story thread. I need to get my phone, which is in the bedroom, so I can call my friend. The thread ties intention across space and time. When the storytelling function is reduced, those threads don't hold as firmly. You still move through space. You just don't always remember why you started moving. This can happen multiple times a day during this phase. It's disconcerting. You'll stand in doorways, blinking, trying to remember. The thought was there a moment ago. Now it's gone. This isn't memory loss. It's the story buffer clearing more frequently. Your brain is prioritizing present moment, processing over narrative continuity. In practical terms, this means you might need external reminders, notes, alarms, lists. Not because you're incapable, but because the internal tracking system is temporarily operating at lower bandwidth. This is fine. Use the tools. Don't interpret the need for tools as decline. You might also notice you lose track of time more easily. Time perception is closely tied to narrative. We mark time by events, by story progression. First this happened, then that, then this. When the narrator is quiet, events still happen, but the marking is less precise. Hours can pass in what feels like minutes, or minutes can stretch unexpectedly. Neither experience is more accurate than the other. They're both perceptions. But the variability can be disorienting. Pressure, warmth, ringing. These often accompany shifts in nervous system balance, from alert to restorative. The body has been in a prolonged state of readiness, even subtle readiness. The kind that doesn't announce itself as stress, but accumulates like atmospheric pressure. When that releases, the nervous system recalibrates. Blood flow changes, muscle tension shifts, inner ear pressure fluctuates. These sensations are not symptoms of something wrong. They're signatures of something adjusting. You might notice temperature changes, feeling colder or suddenly warmer. The autonomic nervous system is rebalancing between sympathetic and parasympathetic modes. When the sympathetic system is chronically activated, even slightly, your body maintains a higher metabolic baseline, more heat production, more tension. When it shifts to parasympathetic dominance, that baseline drops. Metabolism slows, extremities cool. This can feel like your body losing energy, but it's actually conserving it. Some people experience cold hands and feet during this phase. Others feel internal warmth, like a low-grade fever without illness. Both are recalibration. The thermostat is adjusting. You might notice a kind of gentle static in your awareness. Not intrusive, just present, like the hum of electronics in a quiet room. This is the brain's background activity, becoming briefly perceptible as foreground narration decreases. Normally, the narrative voice is loud enough to mask the subtle processing underneath. When the voice quiets, you hear what was always there. Neural activity, the hum of a living system. It's not tinnitus, though it can sound similar. It's not external sound. It's perception of internal process. Some traditions call this the inner sound. Some neurologists attribute it to increased attention on normally filtered sensory input. Whatever the mechanism, it's harmless, just noticeable. If it bothers you, you can shift attention to external sound. Music, nature, voice. If it doesn't bother you, you can let it be. It will fade into background again eventually. Some people describe a sense of floating. Others describe a sense of heaviness. Both are the same process experienced through different nervous system baselines. Floating, the release of held tension. The body feels lighter because it's no longer braced. Heaviness, the awareness of the body's actual weight, no longer masked by adrenaline and readiness. Both are real, both are normal. Your experience will depend on whether your baseline was more tension-based or more dissociation-based. If you've been holding yourself up through effort, release feels like floating. If you've been escaping the body through mental activity, return feels like heaviness. Neither is better, both are recalibration. There can be moments of emotional flatness, not depression, just a pause in reactive charge. The system that generates instant emotional labels for experiences is resting. You can still feel, but the automatic interpretation layer is slower to activate. This can be disconcerting if you're used to immediate emotional clarity, but emotional clarity isn't always accuracy. Sometimes it's just speed. In this phase, emotions arrive in a more neutral state. They're present, but they don't insist on themselves. You might watch something sad and feel something, but it doesn't have the usual emotional contour. Or someone might irritate you, and you notice the irritation, but it doesn't escalate into full anger. This isn't emotional suppression. It's emotional decompression. The feelings are there, they're just not pressurized. This can make you feel disconnected from your own emotional life. I should care more about this. Why don't I care more? You do care. You're just not reacting with the same intensity. Intensity isn't depth. Sometimes intensity is just noise. This quieter emotional state allows you to perceive more subtle feeling tones. Things you would have missed under the louder reactivity. Contentment, mild interest, gentle aversion, subtle appreciation. These don't announce themselves. They have to be noticed. And you can notice them now, because the louder signals have quieted. Why fixing makes it worse? The mistake many people make is trying to fix silence. They search for meaning. They analyze the absence. But silence isn't a problem to solve. It's a phase to pass through. When you try to restart commentary, you're interrupting a process that needs to complete. Trying to restart identity too early is like forcing a system reboot before updates finish installing. You end up with corrupted files, processes half-loaded, instability where there could have been integration. The mind wants to return to familiar operations. It reaches for the narrative voice like reaching for a phone in the morning. But if the system isn't ready, forcing the restart creates lag, a sense of delay, increased effort for diminished output. Some people panic during this phase and try to flood the system with stimulation. New projects, new goals, new identities to try on. This temporarily masks the silence, but extends the recalibration period. It's like turning on all the lights in a house to convince yourself the power isn't flickering. The lights may come on, but the underlying grid still needs repair. The impulse to fix is understandable. Something feels different, so the mind assumes something is wrong. But different isn't wrong. Different is just different. The discomfort comes from unfamiliarity, not from actual malfunction. Think of it like this. If you've worn a heavy backpack for years and someone finally takes it off, your shoulders feel strange. Light, exposed, almost vulnerable. The instinct is to put weight back on, because weight is what you know. But your shoulders don't need the weight. They need time to adjust to its absence. Same with the mind. The narrative weight has been removed. The system feels exposed. But it doesn't need the weight back. It needs time. People try to fix this in predictable ways. Some dive into spiritual practice, more meditation, more inquiry, more techniques. But more practice is still more doing, and this phase is about not doing. You can't meditate your way through a biological recalibration any more than you can meditate a broken bone into healing faster. The system has its own timeline. Your job is to not interfere. Some people try to fix it by returning to old habits, busyness, distraction, social overstimulation. This works briefly. The silence gets drowned out. But it doesn't resolve. It waits. And the more you avoid it, the more abrupt it becomes when it finally catches up. Better to meet it now, when it's still gentle. Others try to analyze their way through. They research. They read about neuroscience, spirituality, psychology. They try to understand exactly what's happening so they can manage it. But understanding is itself a narrative function. Trying to understand the silence just creates more noise. It's like trying to hear silence by talking about it. The description isn't the thing. There's also a common trap of turning the silence into a new identity. I'm someone who's transcended the ego. I'm in a post-narrative state. This is just a new story. A spiritual story, but still a story. And stories, even spiritual ones, are what the system is resting from. You don't need a better story. You need the space between stories. The fixing impulse also comes from fear. Fear that this state is permanent. Fear that you've lost something you'll never get back. But nothing is lost. Everything is in reorganization. Your personality didn't disappear. Your capabilities didn't vanish. Your sense of self didn't dissolve. They're all still here, just quieter, just less insistent. And that's temporary. Well, the insistence might not return, but the functionality will. You'll be able to think clearly again, plan again, engage again. But it might feel different than before, more spacious, less urgent. And that difference is not a deficit. Some people mourn the loss of their old self during this phase. I used to be so driven, so clear, so passionate. But that driven clarity often came with a cost. Anxiety, overwork, inability to rest. This new state has different costs and benefits. Less drive, maybe, but also less compulsion. Less clarity, maybe, but also less rigidity. Less passion, maybe, but also less suffering. Neither state is superior. They're just different operational modes. The trap is comparing them as if one is the goal and the other is failure. They're both just phases, and phases pass. Another way people try to fix this is by seeking external validation. They ask others, "Do I seem different? Do I seem okay?" They're trying to outsource the assessment because their own internal assessment system is offline. But others can't tell you if you're okay. They can only tell you if you seem okay to them. And seeming okay is not the same as being okay. You might seem fine and feel disoriented, or seem off and feel perfectly clear. External feedback is useful for practical functioning. Am I meeting my responsibilities? Am I communicating clearly? But it can't tell you whether your internal process is correct. Only the process itself can reveal that, through completion. The urge to fix is really the urge to control, to manage the unmanageable. But consciousness, reorganizing itself, is not a controllable process. It's more like weather than like machinery. You can't fix weather. You can only prepare for it and move through it. Same here. Prepare, make sure your life can accommodate some spaciness. Reduce obligations if possible. Be gentle with expectations. Move through. Let the process complete without trying to speed it up or understand it fully. That's all. The fixing impulse will arise repeatedly. That's normal. Each time it arises, you can notice it, and then let it dissolve. You don't have to obey every impulse, especially the impulse to make things familiar again. Familiarity is comfortable, but comfort isn't always what's needed. Sometimes what's needed is tolerance, the ability to be with what is, even when what is doesn't make sense yet. The science moment. In physics, observation changes systems. In the brain, constant self-observation does the same. When observation relaxes, systems reorganize. There's a concept in quantum mechanics called decoherence. When a system is measured constantly, it behaves one way. When measurement stops, probabilities collapse differently. The brain isn't a quantum system in the mystical sense, but the principle applies. Constant self-monitoring locks certain patterns in place. When monitoring reduces, those patterns can dissolve and reform. Neuroscientific research on the default mode network shows that self-referential thinking activates specific regions: the medial prefrontal cortex, the posterior cingulate cortex. These areas light up when you're thinking about yourself, your past, your future, your narrative. In certain meditative states, and in states of flow, activity in these regions decreases. This isn't the brain shutting down. It's the brain reallocating energy. Self-referential processing is expensive. It requires continuous updates, constant cross-checking between memory, prediction, and present perception. When that process quiets, energy becomes available for other forms of cognition: pattern recognition, spatial reasoning, nonverbal insight. Some people report sudden solutions to old problems during this phase, not through analysis, but through pattern completion that happens outside language. The brain has been working on these problems in the background. When the foreground narrator quiets, the solutions surface. There's also the concept of neural pruning. The brain doesn't just add connections, it also removes them. Synaptic pruning happens throughout life, but intensifies during periods of transition. Adolescence, early adulthood, and during significant psychological shifts. The brain eliminates connections that are no longer efficient or necessary. This pruning is what allows for new configurations to emerge. But during the pruning process, things feel unstable because they are unstable. Neural pathways that used to carry certain thoughts or feelings are being dismantled. Before new pathways are established, there's a gap, a silence. This is the silence you're in. From a neuroscience perspective, what you're experiencing might be described as a shift in network dominance. The default mode network, which handles self-referential thought, is less active. Other networks, the salience network, the executive control network, are rebalancing. This rebalancing takes time. During the transition, things feel uncoordinated. Different networks are trying to establish new communication protocols. It's like a group reorganizing leadership. There's a period of confusion before the new structure stabilizes. Some researchers talk about predictive processing. The brain is constantly generating predictions about what will happen next. These predictions are based on past experience and current context. When predictions are accurate, the brain uses less energy. It's running on autopilot. When predictions fail, the brain has to update its models. This requires more energy and creates a sense of surprise or disruption. In the state you're in now, many of the brain's predictions are failing. The old models, about who you are, how you respond, what you care about, don't fit as well. So the brain is in constant update mode, revising its models, testing new predictions. This is cognitively expensive. It's why you feel tired. But it's also necessary. The old models were based on an old operational state. You're in a new state now. New models are being built. Once they're built, the fatigue will decrease. Predictions will stabilize. Autopilot will return. But the autopilot will be running on different programming. There's also the role of neurotransmitters to consider. Dopamine, serotonin, norepinephrine. These chemicals regulate mood, motivation, attention. During periods of prolonged stress or prolonged mindfulness practice, neurotransmitter levels can shift. Not into pathology, just into a different balance. Lower dopamine can mean reduced motivation and reward seeking. This isn't depression, it's recalibration. The system that was constantly seeking validation, seeking progress, seeking stimulation, is downregulating. It doesn't need to seek as much anymore. Some of what it was seeking has been found. This feels like flatness, but it's actually contentment, just a version of contentment that's unfamiliar. Serotonin shifts can affect mood stability. You might feel more even, less reactive. Again, this isn't numbness. It's balance. But balance feels different from the highs and lows you might be used to. Norepinephrine affects alertness and stress response. When it decreases, you feel calmer, but also less sharp. This isn't cognitive decline. It's the nervous system shifting out of fight or flight baseline. You've been running on mild adrenaline for a long time. It felt normal. It felt like clarity. But it was actually chronic activation. Your body is stepping down from that now. The stepping down phase feels like fog, but it's not fog. It's the absence of artificial stimulation. Once the system adjusts, clarity will return, but it will be a different kind of clarity. Not the bright, sharp, urgent clarity of stress hormones. The softer, steadier clarity of a nervous system at rest. This isn't the future rewriting the past. It's the brain closing loops that are no longer needed. Every experience creates a kind of open loop, an expectation, a question, a tension-seeking resolution. Most of these loops are small. They close quickly. Some remain open for years. The brain keeps these loops indexed. It runs simulations, testing possible closures. When certain conditions are met, often conditions outside conscious awareness, the loop closes. This closure releases energy. It frees up processing capacity. In conscious experience, this can feel like sudden relief, or completion, or a kind of quiet click like a lock turning. But you may not know which loop closed. You just feel the effect. Completion feels like silence. Not the silence of absence, but the silence of resolution. Like the moment after finishing a long book. There's nothing more to read, but the story is whole. Or like the silence after a question has been fully answered. Not with words, but with understanding that renders words unnecessary. This is the silence you're in now. Loops you didn't know were open are closing. Questions you didn't know you were asking are being answered. Not with information, with resolution. The resolution happens beneath language. You can't articulate what's been resolved. But you can feel the space it creates. More room, more ease, less background tension. This is integration. The process of making the unconscious conscious doesn't always involve bringing things into awareness. Sometimes it involves releasing the need for them to be conscious at all. Some things resolve by being fully processed and then dissolved. They don't become memories you can access. They become space where tension used to be. The transition point. There's a phase that comes before full silence, the transition point. You're not fully in the old operating system, but the new one hasn't fully loaded either. This is the most disorienting part, because you have access to neither the old capabilities nor the new ones. You're between frameworks. In the old framework, you knew who you were, you knew what mattered, you knew how to move through the world. That framework is dissolving. The certainties are becoming uncertainties. But the new framework hasn't formed yet, so there's nothing to replace what's dissolving. This creates a kind of vertigo, like standing on a staircase, and the step beneath you disappears before the next step appears. You're briefly suspended, nowhere to put weight. This suspension is temporary, but while you're in it, it feels endless. Time distorts during the transition. Days can feel like weeks, weeks like days. There's no clear progression, no sense of moving toward anything. Just the ongoing sense of being unmoored. People in this phase often describe feeling like they're waiting, but they don't know what they're waiting for. There's a sense of anticipation without object. Something is coming, but there's no way to know what. This is the system in between states, not quite resting, not quite active. Buffering. The buffering can include strange dreams, more vivid than usual, more symbolic. The unconscious is more active during this phase because the conscious narrative function is reduced. Dreams are how the unconscious processes. It sorts and integrates without language. So dreams become more frequent, more intense, more memorable. You might wake from dreams feeling like you've been working all night, because you have been. Just not consciously. The transition phase also includes what some people call ego backlash. The old identity structure, sensing its dissolution, tries to reassert itself. This can manifest as sudden spikes of anxiety, sudden urgency about old goals, sudden attachment to old patterns. It feels like regression, like you're losing progress. But it's not regression. It's the system testing whether the old configuration still works. It doesn't, so the test fails, and the dissolution continues. But the testing can be uncomfortable, because for a moment, the old urgency returns, and it feels real. You might suddenly care intensely about something you thought you'd released, a relationship, a career goal, an old wound. The intensity is real, but it's not information. It's just the old system firing up one more time before it powers down. Let it fire, let it fade. Don't interpret the spike as meaning something's wrong or that you've lost your progress. Progress isn't linear. It includes testing. It includes temporary returns to old states. The temporary returns are how the system confirms the old state is no longer needed. If the old state still served you, it would stick. But it won't stick, because the conditions that required it have changed. You'll notice the spike, feel the old feelings, and then watch them dissolve again. Each time this happens, the dissolution is a little easier, a little quicker. Eventually, the old system stops testing. It accepts the new configuration. But until then, there will be moments of upheaval, moments where everything feels destabilized. These moments are not setbacks. They're part of the process. The transition phase is also where people encounter what's sometimes called the void. Not the peaceful silence that comes later, the uncomfortable nothing that comes during. The void is the space between identities, between purposes, between meanings. It's not depression. It's not existential crisis. It's the gap between one operating system and the next. In the void, nothing feels meaningful. Not because meaning has disappeared, but because the meaning-making function is offline. You can't generate reasons, can't generate purpose, can't generate motivation. Everything feels neutral, flat, gray. This is deeply unsettling for a mind accustomed to color-coding experience. Good, bad, meaningful, meaningless. The old categories don't work. But new categories haven't formed yet. So you're left with raw experience, no interpretation, no frame. Just, this is happening. The void isn't permanent, but it lasts longer than you'd like. And there's no way to bypass it. You have to cross it, slowly, without guidance. Because guidance is external meaning, and this phase is about releasing the need for external meaning. You won't die in the void, you won't disappear. But it will feel like you might, because the you that you know is based on meaning-making. Without that function, that you becomes unclear. But unclear isn't gone, it's just not defined at the moment. Definition will return, but first there's this. The undefined phase, the unstructured phase. Some people describe it as a kind of death, and in a sense it is. Not physical death, but the death of a particular configuration of self. That configuration held together through narrative, through meaning, through identity. When those elements dissolve, the configuration can't maintain itself. So it collapses. What's left is the raw awareness that was always underneath. Awareness without content, without direction, without self-reference. This is what mystics sometimes call pure being. But when you're in it without context, it doesn't feel mystical. It feels empty, uncertain, almost threatening. Because the familiar landmarks are gone, and you don't yet know how to navigate without them. But navigation will return, a different kind of navigation. Not based on maps and goals, based on immediate sensing. What's needed now, what's here now, what's true now. That kind of navigation is quieter, less certain, but more accurate. Because it doesn't rely on projections, it relies on contact. The transition phase teaches you contact, by removing everything else. The integration window. After the transition, there's a window, the integration window. This is when the new configuration starts to stabilize. You'll notice small things first. Tasks become slightly easier. Decisions feel less heavy. There's still space between stimulus and response, but the space feels natural now instead of glitchy. You start to trust the quiet. You stop testing it. The old impulse to fill the silence with activity decreases, not because you're suppressing it, because it's genuinely less urgent. In the integration window, you're learning to operate from the new baseline. It's like learning to walk after a long illness. The body remembers how, but the coordination is rusty. You'll have good days and rough days, good hours and rough hours. The variability is normal. The system is testing its new parameters. What can I do now? How much energy do I have? What feels aligned? These questions get answered through trial, through small experiments. You try something, see how it feels, adjust. There's less planning in this phase, less long-term projection. Because the system is still too new to know what it can sustain. So you stay closer to the present. You work with what's immediate. This can feel limiting if you're used to big-picture thinking, but it's not limitation, it's recalibration. You're learning what's true now, not what was true before, not what might be true later. Now, the integration window is also when insights start to surface. Things you've been processing unconsciously start to become conscious. Not as thoughts, as knowing. You'll suddenly understand something you couldn't articulate before, about yourself, about a situation, about a pattern. The understanding doesn't come through analysis, it just arrives. Whole, complete, obvious. Oh, that's what that was. These moments of clarity are the fruit of the silence. The brain solved problems while the narrator was offline. Now the solutions are coming through. You don't need to do anything with them, just notice them. Let them inform your movement. Some of the insights will be small. I don't actually like this activity. I was doing it out of obligation. Some will be larger. The story I've been telling about my life isn't accurate. Here's what's actually true. Both kinds are valuable. Both kinds reconfigure how you move forward. During integration, relationships often shift. The way you relate to people changes because the way you relate to yourself has changed. Some relationships will deepen because there's less performance, more honesty, more presence. Some relationships will fade because they were based on the old configuration, and that configuration is gone. This isn't failure, it's alignment. You're not trying to maintain relationships. You're letting relationships be what they actually are. Some are deep, some are circumstantial, some are complete. The completion isn't rejection, it's recognition. This served its purpose. The purpose is finished. There's grief in this, even when the completion is mutual and clear. Grief for what was, even if what was isn't needed anymore. Let the grief be present. It's part of integration. You're not just integrating new patterns, you're releasing old ones. And release always includes loss, even when the loss is right. The integration window is also when you start to notice what matters now. Not what should matter, not what used to matter, what actually matters. This might surprise you. Things you thought were central might feel peripheral. Things you thought were minor might feel essential. Don't override this, even if it's confusing. Your system is recalibrating priority. It's more accurate than your conscious assumptions. Trust what emerges, even if it doesn't make sense yet. You might find yourself drawn to different activities, different people, different environments. Follow the draw. Not compulsively, but with curiosity. See what's there, see what it offers. You're in exploration mode now, not execution mode. Exploration doesn't have a goal. It has direction, movement towards something without knowing exactly what. This is how the new configuration finds its shape, through exploration, through contact, through response. You're not building a new self. You're discovering what's here now that the old construction has dissolved. What's here might include capacities you didn't know you had, interests you didn't know you held. Or it might be simpler than that, just less noise, more ease, more room. That's enough, more than enough. Maintenance mode. There is nothing you need to understand right now. The understanding will form on its own, if it needs to form at all. Some things are complete without ever becoming clear. Thoughts may arise, they can pass on their own. You don't have to sort them, file them, or respond to them. Let them move through like weather. The system is resting. Rest doesn't mean unconsciousness. It means release from the obligation to perform. You are not required to be coherent. You are not required to maintain a consistent self. Awareness remains without effort. It's here whether you focus on it or not. Like breathing, like the hum beneath all sound. You can drift or remain still. Both are allowed. There's no correct way to occupy this space. Some part of you is waiting for instructions. That part can relax. No instructions are coming. None are needed. You've already done the work that brought you here. This is the aftermath, the quiet after effort. Let it be quiet. Nothing is being lost in this silence. You're not fading. You're not disappearing. You're present in a way that doesn't require constant confirmation. The mind may generate small flickers of concern. Am I okay? Is this normal? How long will this last? These questions don't need answers. They're just the system checking itself, the way you might tap a wall to see if it's solid. The wall is solid. The tapping is optional. You can let those questions dissolve back into silence. There's a temptation to narrate this experience, to create a story about what's happening. The story isn't necessary. The experience is sufficient on its own. If you find yourself building a framework, notice it, then let it go. Frameworks are useful later. Right now, you're in the thing the framework would try to describe. Being in it is enough. Your body knows how to do this. It's been regulating, repairing, reorganizing since before you had language. Trust the process you can't see. Trust the silence you can't explain. Some part of you wants to know when this ends. It ends when it ends. Trying to predict the endpoint is just another form of monitoring. And monitoring is what you're resting from. So let the timeline be unknown. Let the outcome be uncertain. You are safe in the uncertainty. Uncertainty is not danger. It's just information you don't have yet. And you don't need it yet. This moment is complete without context. Every moment is. You may feel very little right now. That's fine. You may feel a lot. That's fine too. Both are just states. Neither one is progress. Neither one is failure. The system is doing what it does. You're along for the ride, not driving. There's a relief in that, if you let it be relief. Nothing requires your input right now. The world will continue. Your responsibilities will be there when you return. Right now, you're in a buffer state. Transition space. The hallway between rooms. It's not a destination, it's a passage. And passages don't need to be rushed. You can move through this slowly. You can feel the texture of it. The quiet isn't empty, it has a quality. A weight or a lightness, depending on how you meet it. If you listen closely, there's something beneath the silence. Not sound, not thought. Just presence. The presence that's here when everything else falls away. That presence is you. Not the narrated you, not the you with a history and a plan. The you that exists prior to story. It doesn't need maintenance. It doesn't need improvement. It's already here, already whole. The noise was never a problem. The silence isn't a solution. Both are movements within the same awareness. And that awareness is steady. It doesn't come and go. Only the content changes. Right now, the content is quiet. Let it be quiet. You'll know when it's time to move. Not through effort, through something else. A readiness that arises on its own. Until then, rest here. Let the system complete what it started. Let the silence be enough. You are exactly where you need to be. Not because this is special, but because this is where you are. And where you are is always enough. The next phase will come. You don't have to call it. It will arrive when the conditions are right. For now, the conditions are these: quiet, rest, presence. That's all. And that's enough. There's no scorecard, no measurement of how well you're doing this. You can't do it wrong. You can resist it, but even resistance is part of the process. The system will complete despite resistance, just more roughly. So if you can, soften the resistance. Not by forcing, just by noticing. I'm resisting, that's what's happening. And then let the resistance be there, without adding to it. Resistance plus judgment creates struggle. Resistance alone is just tension, and tension eventually releases. Your breath is still happening, your heart is still beating. These processes don't need your attention to continue. Same with the reorganization. It continues whether you focus on it or not. So you can let your attention rest wherever it wants to rest. On the body, on sound, on the feeling of air moving. Or on nothing in particular, just open, just receptive. There's no goal here, no target state. Just this, whatever this is. And this is always changing, slightly, subtly. But the awareness of this doesn't change, it's constant. Like a screen that displays different images. The images change, the screen doesn't. You are the screen, not the images. The images are the content of experience, thoughts, feelings, sensations. They come and go. You remain. Not as a thing, not as a self, as the space in which things appear. This space isn't empty, it's full of potential. Every moment, something could arise, or nothing could arise. Both are fine. You don't have to prefer one over the other. Busy mind, quiet mind, active body, still body. All acceptable, all allowed. There's a phrase, "This too shall pass." It's often used to comfort during difficulty. But it applies to everything. Joy passes, peace passes, confusion passes. Everything is temporary, except the awareness of the temporary. That awareness is what you are. And it's perfectly fine, exactly as it is. Nothing's missing, nothing's broken. Just this, now here. However it is. Let the body soften a little more, if it wants to. Let the jaw release, the shoulders drop, the belly relax. Not forcing, just allowing. The body holds patterns of readiness, old tensions, old guards. They can release now. There's nothing to guard against in this moment. If the body doesn't want to release, that's okay too. It has its own wisdom, its own timing. You can trust it. Even when it feels uncomfortable, even when it aches. The body knows what it's doing. It's been living longer than your conscious mind. It knows how to regulate. Your job isn't to control it, just to be with it. To feel what it's feeling without needing to fix it. The breath is a good anchor, not because breathing is special, because it's always available. Always happening, always now. If the mind wanders, the breath is still here. If the mind spirals, the breath is still here. In, out. No effort, just happening. You can rest your attention there when everything else feels too much. Or you can let attention float, nowhere specific. Both are fine. Some people find comfort in repetition, a phrase, a word, a sound. If that helps, use it. Some people find comfort in emptiness, no phrase, no anchor, just space. If that helps, rest there. There's no right way, no superior method. Just what works for you now in this moment. And what works now might be different from what worked 5 minutes ago. That's how it is, always shifting, always adjusting. The system finds its balance through micro-adjustments. Thousands of them, constantly. You don't have to manage them. They manage themselves. You just have to allow them. Not interfere, not force, not fix. Just allow. The night will pass, the day will come. Or the day will pass, the night will come. Either way, time moves. And you move with it, not by effort, by existing. You can't stop time, you can't pause it. You can only be in it. And being in it is what you're already doing. So there's nothing to achieve here. No state to reach, no experience to have. Just being. As you are. Where you are. When you are. And that's complete. Every moment complete. Not because it's perfect, because it's whole. Everything that needs to be here is here. Everything that needs to happen is happening. You are exactly on track. Even if it doesn't feel like it. Even if you can't see the track. You're on it. The next step will appear when you need it. Not before, not after. Exactly when. So rest now. Let the system do what it knows how to do. Let the silence be what it is. You are held by something larger than your understanding. Not held by belief, held by process. The process of life continuing, of systems regulating, of awareness persisting. You don't have to believe in it. It's happening regardless. So sink into it. Let it carry you. You're safe here. In the quiet, in the unknown, in the space between. You've always been safe here. You just forgot for a while. Now you're remembering. Not through thought, through being. And being is enough. More than enough. It's everything.